This is Middle Class Matt from don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com and NC Sports Genius 1. And you can follow me on Twitter at NC Sports Genius 1. And today I want to recap the 2012 ACC tournament. Now, I had worries about this tournament. It has sort of lost its luster from the past years. When I was a child growing up, I really liked the ACC tournament. I talked about that in the preview. Well, this was a great tournament. Very exciting. But before I talk about the ACC tournaments and the winners and losers of it, I'd like to talk about an uncomfortable subject, which no one likes to say I told you so, but I have to say it. All year I have talked on my blog entries about how the referees in the ACC aren't doing a good job. And a lot of people have left comments about, and I want everyone to leave comments negative or positive that they would like, if they'd like to. That's great. But a lot of people have said, you know, this is not something you should talk about, and this is something people talk about at a bar and over friends. But now the national media is talking about how bad the ACC refs are. A lot of it doing with the State-North Carolina game. Well, State's sort of been cheated all year, which is unfortunate because they're a good team. But I was ahead of the curve with all that. So if you want expert analysis, come here. One of the reasons I started don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com and sort of began to give my opinions about sports was that I was, my nickname is Middle Class Matt. And I was this middle class sports fan, lived in the suburbs, but I would continually watch guys on the radio and TV, and I would be right and they wouldn't be. Now, you can't be right every time, but I was right more than they were. So I decided that I would do this blog and these entries to show, this is the way it is. So if you want to be ahead of the curve and have expert analysis that none of your friends are getting, be sure to tune in to Middle Class Matt at don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com and NC Sports Genius 1. Another thing I was ahead on the curve was how overrated Duke was. I've been talking about how Duke was winning games, and a lot of it because of referees and different things that were happening, the referees helping them out and them getting calls, and how they weren't that good. 4 out of the 5 ESPN analysts that did the NCAA, preview the NCAA brackets when they were released, said that they felt like out of the number 1 and number 2 seeds that Duke would be the first one to lead the tournament. They would get beat early. Now, that might be a motivating factor for Duke, and I may be right. But the point is now the national media has caught up with me about being ahead, and I was ahead how Duke was an overrated team all year. A team that depends on a 3 that much and never goes into their big men or doesn't adequately get the ball to their big men, that team is not balanced and is not going to be a good team. Duke was probably an 8 or 9 loss team this year. Instead, they end up with 6 losses and a 2nd seed. We'll have to see what happens. Now, in the ACC tournament, Florida State was the big story. They looked really good. Now, the question I would pose before I talk about how good Florida State looked, do the sports fans out there think that Florida State would have won the ACC tournament if Duke had Ryan Kelly and North Carolina had John Henson? Especially John Henson, because it really changes everything Carolina does. Anthony Davis has been a huge star on the college scene this year. Most people are picking him to win the National Player of the Year. Definitely the Defensive Player of the Year. In my opinion, John Henson is a poor man's Anthony Davis and probably is the 2nd best defender after Anthony Davis. So that's a huge impact. If Kentucky lost Anthony Davis, how would they do? So losing John Henson was a big deal, especially with the size of Florida State. Now, Florida State looks good, and they won some impressive victories with outside shooting and inside size and physical play by their big men. The games were close, but still, Florida State has made an impact and everyone has noticed. They could possibly go on a deep tournament run, sort of propelled by the momentum the momentum that they received from the ACC, the win in the ACC tournament. Now, another impressive team in the ACC tournament was North Carolina State. They raised a lot of eyebrows. State looked really good. Lorenzo Brown and C.J. Leslie, they're 2 players I've talked about. This may be bad news for State fans. I hate to be the messenger, but they're probably going to go to the NBA. Lorenzo Brown looks like an NBA point guard, and C.J. Leslie is extremely talented and extremely athletic. And so they have a possibility to have some upsets in the to accomplish some upsets in the NCAA tournament. Anyway, the ACC tournament was exciting, and I picked Duke and Carolina to probably win it, But I also described Florida State as a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, a hot and cold team, and they were definitely hot. Now, if Duke and UNC, who knows what would have happened if they would have had their players and they'd have been healthy. So that was my pick before I knew Ryan Kelly wasn't going to play and before John Henson got hurt. So who knows? But still, it was a very exciting ACC tournament, and I'm looking forward to the NCAA tournament. I'll see you next time. This is Middle Class Matt from don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com and NC Sports Genius 1.